Hello, everyone. Welcome to another installment of Soup of the Day podcast, where you kind of come and the superintendent has conversations with people about different ministries, different things that they have going on in life, because the goal is to know those that labor among you. And we have some incredible people in the Georgia district with some incredible stories. And so we just want you to be able to know those and hope that this has been a blessing to you. We really enjoy being able to share these stories so that you are blessed, empowered, equipped, and we want to offer these resources to you today. I've got a wonderful friend, and I've known Robin Snider for a long time. I've known Steve all the way going back to family life, way back when. And Robin is our director for Founders Care. And so if you don't know what Founders Care is, right after I became the superintendent, I wanted to make sure that we took care of our senior retired, our widows and widowers. And just when I was the secretary treasurer, we got a call once where one of our ministers, our credential ministers, had passed away, and we didn't know about it until many days or even weeks afterwards. And I said to myself, I don't want that to happen again. We need to really take care of those who built the Assemblies of God, these early pastors who have built churches, planted churches, and whatnot. And so I invited Robin to come and to serve as our Founders Care representative and taking care of those. And I will brag on her. She's done a fantastic job of reaching out and staying connected. So, Robin, thank you for coming. Welcome to the Soup of the Day podcast.
Thank you.
I know your story, and I know you and Steve, but maybe the people who are watching don't know. So tell us, go back a ways and tell us about you and Steve and just all that you guys have done.
Thank you for having me today. This is exciting. Steve and I married in 1977, way back when.
Wow. Okay.
So we had been married 43 years when he passed away. But I was 18 for a grand total of about 7 days when we married.
Okay.
And immediately moved to the Atlanta area to pastor a church. So I was 18. He turned 23 like the week after we came to Atlanta. And we were in a different denomination at the time, but we spent 5.5 years there pastoring that church in Decatur, Georgia.
Okay.
Both of our children were born while we were there. And then just some situations happened that we felt like it was time to make a move. And Steve had a heart for evangelism. That was his big thing.
He was a true evangelist. Yes.
I say the Lord called him to evangelize. He allowed us to pastor while our children especially were school age. But so we made the transfer into the Assemblies of God. We evangelized. We pastored, then evangelized, and then pastor again, and then evangelized. So it was that was our way of doing things, and it worked for us. But we started off, we pastored in the first Assemblies of God church we pastored in Lithonia, and there was a little small house, an old house on 14 acres of property that another pastor, a wonderful man, had moved the congregation from the center of Atlanta out to Lithonia, Georgia, and purchased that property. And we went there to pastor. We were there 14 years. Our kids grew up there. We built 3 different buildings while we were there, and really just had a wonderful time. And like I said, our children grew up while we were there. We were there 14 years. And then we evangelized again, and then we went to Conyers and actually built a church basically from the ground up with the Lord's help. Believers Fellowship, still a great church, pastored by John Fennell. And we were there 10 years and built a nice building there and congregation. And so we were there. Then we evangelized a little bit more. Our kids went off to college. And then our next pastorate was in McDonough. Okay. And we took a church that it's a great church today. It just needed some revitalization. It was a great church, had a great congregation, but just needed a little work, needed to be brought up to date. And so we were able to do a lot with the facilities there. And we were there for 6 years. And along the way, helped to establish or get started two or three other churches in the Assemblies of God in Covington, in Thompson. So Steve loved church planting.
Yeah, yes, he did. Church planter, revitalizer, evangelist, and very accomplished musician as well.
Yes, he was. I still have a closet full of guitars at my house, and I cherish them because he loved them. He wrote songs, played the guitar, could play some other instruments as well, but the guitar was his thing. Yeah. And his baby is I think it's a 1953 Martin D28. Beautiful. It's marked up from all the years of use, but it is beautiful.
I love it.
I'll never get rid of it.
Absolutely.
I feel like I can touch it, and I can't play, but I can touch it and I can feel him there. Wrote songs. We recorded several CDs along the way, and our kids are both musically talented, and so I'm real proud of them as well.
That's awesome.
So, we have 2 children, have 4 grandchildren.
Okay.
1 lone 16-year-old girl, and then 3 little boys, ages 7, 8, and almost 10.
Wow. So you don't have a quiet moment when anybody's around, do you?
And I love every minute of it.
I love it.
Every minute of it.
Well, Steve and I, we were friends a long time, and, at the different churches he was at. He was always heavily involved in missions. Yes. And when I was the district youth director, he was always very involved in Speed the Light. That was one of the things that he really leaned into as a church revitalizer, is that we want to get our missions program going well because of just the kingdom economy at play.
That's right.
In that, it was always so wonderful. And then things kind of got turned upside down. With you and with Steve. He got ill. Why don't you walk us through a little bit of that?
Yeah, so first of all, just a little bit of backstory. Steve's mom lived to be 94 years old, and the last year of her life, she was bedridden. And so Steve's oldest brother and I took it upon ourselves to keep her at home and to take care of her. So we're right in the middle of me having to I left home about every other week and went to Lincolnton. We were living in Covington at the time. And I'd leave and go stay a week with her and then come back home. And that was a challenge. That was a great challenge anyway. We're trying to pastor a church. And so anyway, it was a challenge. But right in the middle of that, Steve had just been having some, we thought, minor issues. A little bit, we thought maybe he was having some gallbladder issues. That was the kind of symptoms he was having. And so he had scheduled a doctor's appointment that fall. And then his symptoms got better. And like a lot of men do, he canceled his appointment.
What?
So,
wait, do you guys do that? I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, he did. He canceled his appointment. Well, then the symptoms returned. And so in January of 2019, I went with him to his doctor's appointment. They were going to do CT scans, stuff like that. So they did it, and we went back home and almost immediately got a call from the doctor's office that his gallbladder was fine, his pancreas was fine, his all the things, it was fine. But he had a mass on his kidney, and it was going to have to come out. Mm. And so it's like, oh my gosh, nobody ever expects that, Certainly. So they scheduled an appointment immediately with the urologist. We went in for that, and he talked us through what we were going to have to do. And he actually he referred us to a urologist at Emory, and because he didn't do this kind of surgery. So immediately, it was happening very quickly. They got us to a urologist at Emory, and we saw him on the 11th of February. And before we left his office, he said, "I've had a cancellation for tomorrow. We're going to do this surgery tomorrow." Yeah. Bless her heart. I don't know her, but a woman was scheduled and she got the flu. But it got us in that
sooner,
quick. And so it was just a mad dash to let family know, and our church, we're in the middle of pastoring a church. So we went in that next morning and for surgery. And when they got in there, the cancer that was in his kidney had gone into, they call it the vena cava. It's a big artery that kind of goes from the kidneys to the heart and all that. Well, there was some cancer in that too, so they ended up having to call in a thoracic surgeon as well. Mm-hmm. So we're typically, and in most cases, when there's cancer in the kidney, they can remove the kidney and you can go on with life for a long time. But because of the extent of the cancer, his incision was like 12, 13 inches long. It was goodness. Stapled. And so anyway, he did fine with the surgery. Of course, very sore. He was diabetic as well. So we had those issues. But he came home from the hospital 2 or 3 days later. And then that evening got up by himself to go to the bathroom. And we didn't know he'd been dehydrated. And he passed out and fell and broke his foot. So now we've got staples up and down. He can't use crutches because of that. So, I mean, it just added an extra layer of recovery for him. It took a long time for him to recover, but we were hopeful that was going to be it. Of course, had a lot of people praying for us. Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. All over the nation, really, people were praying. Something we are forever grateful for. But he was not able to get back. Now, this was February. He was not able really to get back into the pulpit until June. And even that, he couldn't stand for very long. He was still in a boot for his foot. Mm. It took a long time to heal. The doctors just said, your body's trying to heal this incision and everything that was done inside, and it's just taken a long time for the foot. So anyway, after he was able to get back in the pulpit, basically from a wheelchair, he could stand every once in a while, but he'd give out quickly. So around July, maybe 1st of August, he was fixing to turn 65. And he said, I'm not doing the church any good. He just felt like he was hurting the church. Right. That there needed to be a change. So he decided to go ahead and retire. And we sold our home. It sold within 8 hours of putting it on the market for full asking price. And several years before that, we'd bought a little home in Lincolnton, Georgia, which is that's where we were from. It was our hometown. We still had so much family there. And so we moved home. We packed up everything and we moved back to Lincoln. And when I think back on it, I think, oh my gosh, that was just, the Lord just moved in all of that. Because I don't know what I'd do without the family and friends and the church that I have there. But so we continued after that. We'd drive back to Emory every 3 weeks, get scans, many times have to get fluids, sometimes even have to get a blood transfusion because Steve's body was just so weak. And but he was getting treatment, some intravenous treatments, not chemo at first, but it was just it was hard. And then they found it again on his right lung, so they had to go back in and remove the top lobe of his right lung. That was about a year later. As a matter of fact, we were able to go. When the Ministers' Retreat did the cruise. Yes. That was in February. Yep. And we were able to go on that cruise, and as soon as we got home, he went in for surgery for that top portion of his lung to be removed because they'd found a little cancer there. Again, we were hopeful that was the extent of it, but just a little while later, they found it in his liver. And he asked the doctor, he said, well, can we operate? And they said, after a while, there's certain things we just can't keep cutting on you for. Right. But anyway, the cancer ended up and down his spine. He knew that he was going to have a really tough time. And so about 3 weeks before he passed away, after trying all the treatments, chemo pill, my husband was a big man. He was
Very
6'5".
tall. Yeah, huge.
And when he was diagnosed, he weighed 215 pounds. When he passed away, he weighed about 150.
Oh, my.
And so it got to where he could hardly make the trips to Emory. I did all the driving, of course, which was another story because, it just is.
Yeah.
It just is. But we had made the decision at the beginning of the year, 2021, to discontinue going to the doctors at Emory. We felt like it'd be best to transfer to Augusta. They have great doctors.
Yep.
And we felt like it would be easier on him. But then before we could ever see a doctor in Augusta, he made the decision that he just felt like he could not recover from what was going on in his body. And 3 weeks after that, he passed away. But we were able to have hospice come to the house. And, it was right in the middle of COVID.
Yes.
And a lot of people would say, well, you're not going to let anybody come visit him, right? But we just did. We just said, you know what? People, friends, family, they want to see him. He wants to see them. And so we did. And so we had a constant flow of friends and family come in and see him and pray with him. And for about a week and a half, he could actually, talk with them and laugh. And a good young minister friend came in, and as he was walking out the door, Steve just winked at him. And he just loved that. He just thought that was the best thing in the world. We had family members that brought in guitars and would crowd around the bed, and all of us family would get around and we would just sing. Kind of a funny story. Jeff and Sherry Easter, of course, are family, and they came over one night with some other family members to sing. And, Jeff's dad wrote the song, Thank You, Lord, for your blessings on me, and so Jeff was playing it on the guitar. Now, Jeff is a keyboard player, but he hit a wrong note. And Steve looked at him and said, "That's so and so." He told him what note it was.
That is
just
that
something
is Steve.
we'll always remember. And I'm so grateful for the time that the Lord gave us.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people don't get that.
They don't.
They don't.
And you guys had a very large friend group and,
Yes.
and ministers, and we were all praying for Steve. We as a district were.
I know you were.
We knew that you guys were walking through a very difficult season, and you had a great church there. First Assembly in Lincoln's fantastic congregation, and you got a lot of friends. But that's a very hard season, Robin, to walk through.
It is. There's just so many things that encompass caring for somebody that's ill. I'd done it for his mom and continued somewhat when I could, and then caring for Steve. And then when that stops all of a sudden, my kids are gone. My husband's gone. My mother-in-law's, So, part of that, just finding where you fit in. Okay, I've been a pastor's wife for 43 years. I've been a wife for 43 years. I'm not that anymore.
Your whole identity are those things.
It's just, it's amazing how many things are, I've been active in my church, and here I am now. I've got to start, even though, I got family and friends and I know everybody basically in the church, to walk in the door of the church by myself to come to district council without Steve, to do just all these things. So you're walking walking through now with, alone basically. You're not alone, but you're alone.
Sure.
Everything just changes. I saw actually a Facebook post from a friend the other day that had just lost her mother. And although it's different, she said, I have cared for her for all these years. and had caregivers helping her that would come into the house. Now all of them are gone. Her mother had passed away, and she said, what do I do now? So there's just so many things, the loneliness, the grief, the wondering where you fit in, to a certain degree, not wanting to burden my children with how I'm feeling or things I'm going through, having to care for my home and my car and pay all the bills. And, although I was already doing that, still, if there was ever an issue, hey, Steve, what do we do with this? Or, my brakes are squeaking on my car. What do I do with this? And so it's just so many layers of emotions that you go through.
And for those that are watching, because we're a couple of years into this, okay?
3.5 now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 3.5 years into this.
Yeah.
And we have those that are watching right now that are walking through or in their beginning stages. Right. And so here you are, 3.5 years. How did you manage? How did you process? What did God do in your life to really help you through this?
I tell a lot of people when Steve first died, I couldn't, a lot of people say, well, read your Bible. Your strength is in, reading the Word of God and praying and reading all this material, to get some resources on grief. Well, I'm going to tell you something. I couldn't read. I just couldn't. And I love to read. I couldn't read my Bible. Now, I'd read my Bible, ever since the day I was saved. But I couldn't read my Bible. Fortunately, I knew enough of it that the words still sustained me.
You just had no emotional bandwidth to do anything.
I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. There was so much to deal with. But there was one thing, and I've shared this with you before, but a lady that I had never met before that actually attends the church where Leah and Philip are, began to send me a publication called Journeying Through Grief.
Yes.
I'd never seen it before, but I received the first one about 3 weeks after Steve passed away. And then one would come about 3 months later, and it was it's 4 issues that cover about a year of grief, or that first year of grief. And for some reason, I could read that. Because I could read a little bit of it. It's created in such a way that you can read a little bit of it and you put it down. But I could read that, and it spoke so much to me. Not only scriptural and just encouraging to me, but also practical things that, this is what you're going through, and this is normal. And it's okay. This is,
Can I stop you there for just a second?
Yeah.
This is normal. And it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel this way. So for those that you are watching, we're human.
Yeah.
And we have those days. And there's no shame in walking through a very difficult season. God's not afraid of our questions. He's not afraid of our feelings. He's not afraid of our emotions.
No.
And so I think you just hit a very poignant a point there, made a strong point there that I think people listening, it's okay to have those days.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's normal.
It is normal. And everybody's, it sounds like some kind of, woke thing, but everybody's normal is different.
Yeah.
Can I just say that?
Sure, sure.
Everybody's grief is different. My sister lost her child, her 30-something-year-old child in November before Steve passed away, to gun violence. Somebody shot and killed her. And I've watched her go through that, and the grief that she's experienced has been totally, I won't say totally different than the grief I've experienced, but different. And so everybody's grief is different. It may last a different period. It's just different.
It is.
And knowing I'll be honest with John, I don't know how anybody gets through things like this without the Lord. Every once in a while, I would write something, and I just kind of pour my heart out. And I wrote one time about just, that there's a difference from being just lonely and actually experiencing from being alone and then actually being lonely. And I wrote some about it before Steve even passed away. I was sitting in the waiting room at Emory while he was in there, and so I wrote some of that, and then some more afterwards. But everybody is just different, and your family dynamic is different. Your church dynamic is different. Your just your emotional state is different.
It's different. Yeah,
it's just different.
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful. Excuse me, that I was surrounded, and I know I was fortunate. I'm fortunate. I am so blessed that I had lots of family around me, even though my kids had to go back to, and they had to deal with this grief on their own, and go back to work. And, and we've all tried to talk through that together, and they've got dear friends that they talk with about that. But I am so grateful that my church family was there, that my blood family was there, my mom, 2 sisters, a brother not very far away, aunts and uncles, and a friend group that included some family that have not, they've refused to let me say no.
Oh, wow.
To getting out with them.
Okay.
And were still some times, especially at the beginning, that I just said, not tonight, not today. I just need, I can't do it. Because a lot of times, look, at our age, most people that we get together with are couples, and to think, okay, well, here we go again. I'm the fifth wheel, or, whatever.
Oh, boy.
But they have always, and that's a real thing. It is. People, you've been married for so long, and all of a sudden you're alone, and your friends are all married. And it's like, oh, well, if I'm going to get together with them, I'm going to be, lone man out or whatever. And, but my friend group has been so great to say, look, don't stay at home by yourself. Come on, let's go. This is not a couple's outing. This is a friend's outing. And so I've been very fortunate.
That's a great way to look at it. Yeah.
I've also been very fortunate that Steve was so mindful of finances. And I know a lot of people don't have that.
Right.
I read a statistic the other day that a while back that the average age of a widow in the United States right now is 59. And about 28% of them still have a mortgage on their home.
Oh, my.
It's, and I love the retired pastors. I love that. We're in that group, but just obviously from my experience,
so add
those
on to
widows.
top of all that other, you've got the financial distress.
Absolutely.
And so you've got people in our churches who are struggling emotionally, and then they've got the practical side of it.
That's right.
And so if we're talking here to pastors and staff pastors, and even some that are volunteer leaders, and we've got people like you in our churches.
Yeah.
So what can we do to better care for them? To make them, hey, come on, we're not going to let you isolate.
Right.
You come and be with us.
Well, first of all, let me just say to pastors, be smart. You say, well, I'm only 50 years old. I'm not going to die. Come on.
Yeah.
Anything.
Sure.
We serve a big God, but we also are in this world and things can happen.
Certainly.
And so I would encourage pastors, do whatever you can to make sure that your family is taken care of.
Yep.
Let me just say that. But then I would also say that, a lot of times in the immediacy of a loss, we're there. We're there. We realize there's, okay, we need to be there. We need to minister to, this family, whatever. But there are just things that go on longer than just those first couple of weeks or a month. We need to be mindful of what their financial state is. We can't help everybody in the world, but there are those that we can help.
Certainly.
And we also need to be an encouragement and say, look, and allow people to grieve. The first few times I went to church, I've sung all my life. And so I knew that Pastor Terry Bonds was, he was anxious for me to get into the choir, but there was a while that I could not do that. I just can't do that yet.
Yeah.
And the Lord helped me, and it was not an incredibly long time before I decided to participate. But we got to be patient with people. But we've got to be
And minister to them where they are. And it's okay to grieve, and it's okay to be emotional, and it's okay to not have a good day.
That's right.
It's okay to question and be angry at times. Anger is a secondary emotion, and so you've got grief and loss, and it comes out sometimes as as anger.
That's right.
But it's really it's layered under all of those other things.
That's
and so in your role as Founders Care, you have a unique perspective on reaching out and caring for those who have walked through similar circumstances that you've walked through. And that was one of the reasons that I asked you to do it, because I knew that you had walked through this and you were keenly aware of all the things that people are walking through and ministering to those. And a card will change somebody's day.
Absolutely.
Just taking a moment to just sit down and say, I'm thinking about you. I'm praying for you.
That's right.
And putting it in the mail and sending a card when someone who's walking through that dark season, it doesn't only takes a minute to do something like that.
It does. It only takes a minute. And, if you have access to a telephone number or an email, even just an email or a text message saying, hey, I'm thinking about you today and I'm praying for you. A lot of times we kind of get by with just saying, well, look, if you need anything, call me. I got news for you. They're not going to call you. I mean, they're just not.
They're not.
They're not going to call you.
They're not going to call
you. So, that's well-meaning and all that, but we really have to be intentional about reaching out and saying, look, I know you're going through this. And I mean, really intentional and knowing that they're not going to ask you for something. So you have to go and you have to be there. You have to say, hey, it's okay. Tell me, can I just come and spend a few minutes with you? Or can I just come and, pray with you? Or can I pray with you over the phone? Or a lot of the newer widows, as far as our retired ministers, they're widows that I've ministered to lately, at first are a little reluctant for me to contact them. But I could just kind of, every once in a while, I don't bug them.
Yeah.
But I just say, hey, I want you to know I'm thinking about you and I'm praying for you. And if there's something that I can pray specifically with you about, I've been there. I've walked this. I am walking this. My grief hasn't ended. I don't know if it will, to a certain extent,
Sure.
So I know some of the things that you're dealing with. And so please let me support you. Let me encourage you. Let me just listen. If there's something I can if you want to just pour your guts out over something, just, let me listen to you. And I've been so amazed.
And so at first they're a little reluctant.
They are.
But then you kind
They
of
don't know me. Most of them don't know me personally.
Sure.
So, if I'll do my best to explain to them, hey, this is who I am. And this is, I want to encourage you. You and your spouse were tremendously important to the Georgia district.
Yes.
Are still important. You're still important to the Georgia district.
That is one of the main things that I have heard over the years from retired ministers, and I was close to our retired superintendents. And one of the things that I had heard from that aspect, and then from ministers or pastors who retired from their churches, is that a lot of times, out of sight, out of mind. And it's not, hey, you're not important to me anymore, but it's one of those things. I'm not pastoring this church, or I'm not pastoring a church, or I'm not involved in a ministry. And so you just kind of get overlooked.
Yeah.
And that's terrible. I mean, especially when they've invested their entire lives into a local church and in our respect, the Assemblies of God as a whole.
Right.
They built those things. And so in those years of probably the most trying seasons of their lives, we want to make sure that we're we're doing what we can to care for them. And I want to say thank you for doing that and being determined to get through the layers, because, we build walls very quickly, especially in the church. We build walls very quickly. And so you build up those walls as a safety mechanism. And here you are just kind of working with them, and you've had some great testimony.
I really have. I try to encourage them, but so many times they end up just encouraging me.
Wow.
So many times I get cards and letters and text messages and phone calls, and all of them are just so grateful that to begin with, that you just had a vision for this and that you saw the importance of remembering them, just making sure that what they did in our district and like for the Assemblies of God and in the kingdom of God is honored, is remembered and honored.
Yes.
And I know for me and, for Steve, I'm sure, and for me on his behalf, to know that the district would remember his work.
Certainly.
His, just his diligence and steadfastness and the work that he did in pastoring churches and evangelizing, and that's remembered and that's honored, and that
when you stop
for that.
pastoring, it doesn't mean you stop being useful in the kingdom. And so if you hit a retirement age and you're stepping away, that doesn't mean, okay, well, you're not useful to the kingdom, you're not useful to the church anymore. As a matter of fact, I've got some of our retired pastors serving in interim roles in churches, and they have forgotten more about pastoring churches than, we've even learned. And so they know they can go into those situations and bring a depth of maturity. To an interim situation. And so God didn't put them on a shelf.
That's right.
All right. You're still very useful.
And I'm a perfect example, even though I didn't hold credentials, I'm a perfect example of still being useful.
Yes.
After when we're not pastoring anymore. Yes. I would have never seen myself doing this years ago. I just never would have seen this. And when you called me, of course, Steve had been gone about a year when you called me. And I had been praying diligently, Lord, I know there's got to be something else for me to do. Even though attending a church and singing in the choir is great, it's great. If that's what, the Lord's called it. But when you've been in ministry for 40 something years and all of a sudden you're not, it's like, Lord, I just feel like you've got something else for me. And then you called and you told me, take 2 or 3 weeks and pray about it. And I did. I think I waited a couple of weeks before I called you back. But I already knew, because I just felt like, okay, Lord, I think this is what, this is the answer to my prayer. I'm teaching an adult Sunday school class at my church. I'm heading up our senior adults at our church. I sing in the choir, and so I just feel like, I'm an example of that. Our life is not over when we retire, or
certainly
when we lose our spouse, or, the Lord still has things for us to do.
Incredible.
And I just believe that if we will seek the Lord and put ourselves out there, sometimes that's the hardest thing.
Certainly.
It's just to put ourselves out there and say, okay, Lord, I know, everything I've done right alongside Steve, but now I don't have him, but I still want to be useful for the kingdom.
I love it.
And I just believe he has a place for us if we'll open our hearts to that.
It.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming today. I appreciate your heart. Appreciate your ministry to our founders, the ones who built our movement. And they are very valuable, and we want to honor them. And Absolutely. Pastor, we just want you to know we love you. If you need resources to minister to those in your church who are walking through similar things, Robin has resources. You mentioned that book on grieving.
Absolutely.
And so we want to be able to offer those resources to you. We're praying for you. We love you. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this with Robin. Robin, again, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And we'll catch you on the next episode.